to lead people in battle, to be shot at and still run through gunfire, and to look behind you and to see grown men following you. I don't know how much more to be alive there is than that. That's what I want to go back to.
Welcome to Combat Story. I'm Ryan Fugit, and I served Warzone tours as an Army attack helicopter pilot and CIA officer over a 15-year career. I'm fascinated by the experiences of the elite in combat. On this show, I interview some of the best to understand what combat felt like on their front lines. This is Combat Story. Today we have an inspiring and vulnerable combat story from Trevor Beaman, an active duty Special Forces 18 Echo. He went from Army cook to long-range surveillance to Green Beret while overcoming significant challenges along the way. In an interesting twist, he would even be an instructor at the Army's dive school, where he oversaw Nick Lavery's successful completion of that course with one leg. As a warning, there are moments in this episode in which we get into some difficult content about abuse from Trevor's childhood that may be hard for people to hear. We also, however, discuss how Trevor overcame that abuse and adversity and would go on to lead fellow Green Berets in combat. Trevor's path is anything but straightforward, as he dealt with recruiting sleight of hand, as many have, that brought him in as a cook, but eventually found his tribe with 3rd Special Forces Group. After multiple deployments, he voluntarily sought out mental health support and, in a positive turn of events, was granted the time to get healthy again while in uniform. He has 18 months of active duty service remaining, still supporting special operations, and he's writing a book about his experiences in a way that will help others help themselves. He has an inspiring TED Talk about overcoming some of the traumatic experiences in his life that provides more context about him and his career. And with that, I hope you enjoy this important story from Trevor Beaman. Trevor, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with us today.
All right, Ryan, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so we got connected obviously through Jay, another former Green Beret who knew you and suggested that I bring you on. He sent me a very inspirational and pretty vulnerable TED Talk you gave, which I'm sure a lot of people have mentioned to you in very kind words. One of the things that, as I was preparing for this, though, that I wanted to start with, I think is about breaking rules. You know, maybe it's something consistent from your childhood through the military, in a very not sinister way, in a positive way to some degree of like this may have been how you were raised for a certain reason, and it's proven to be fairly helpful throughout your career. And I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about the childhood side of you and breaking rules.
Yeah, so when I grew up, I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I used to like ride my bike around neighborhoods and things. And where I was growing up in South Bend, as you're going up into where Notre Dame is, there's this overpass. And I used to collect like bottles and cans. And at some point, I used to throw rocks and stuff off the top of the overpass at cars. And it's just, I think a little bit of like doing things on my own and being mischievous and not necessarily doing what's right, but also kind of like skewering away and nobody knows what you're doing. And like, it's just a time in my life where I was kind of like a little like outlaw on a bike and had my own little freedom because of my own body could kind of like take me into places that, you know, I could get it kind of far away from home. And there wasn't a lot of like structure from my mom to say like, hey, be here. It's kind of like leave the house, go do what you want. The, you know, typical Midwestern thing of just be home when the lights turn on, kind of on the street lights. And that's kind of like how I kind of grew up.
And I think we'll see some of this theme throughout your career, you should say. Yeah. And obviously you're still on active duty as we record this. So yeah. Still time left. But one of the things obviously that I think we got to touch on early is the traumatic side of not just your career, but your childhood. And I think that's what really struck me, obviously, with your TED Talk, which I'm assuming was the genesis of why you wanted to share it. But I was hoping you could give a little insight into what that aspect of your childhood was like.
And so my parents were divorced when I was young. And I think my my mom had felt like she needed someone almost safe in her life. And so she married this man that could like kind of bring us together as a family. And she had moved us to Glenview, which is a northern suburb of Chicago. So we moved from South Bend. And around like third grade, around 8 years old, my stepfather like started to sexually molest me. But at first it wasn't very like graphic is the easiest way. It was a lot of just like slow hand touching, very just I don't know, vanilla, you call it, to make things easy. But so that starts this almost compartmentalizing of life. Is there one thing's happening during the day of my life and how I'm living and who I'm being shown as a person, and then stuff that's happening at night where I feel like I'm a different kind of kid, and this other person is showing something different to me as well.
And so that's kind of at a very early age, you're trying to manage that experience,
Yeah.
I'm assuming on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And there was a lot of confusion. Like I say, like my body's response, the biological response, and the output of the things in my brain that are so powerful that I couldn't understand and I couldn't stop it. The drive that it has for me to like want it to happen again, and the desire to feel good was overwhelming and powerful. And that's one of the things that's probably the hardest things that I had to deal with saying that I was sexually abused, is that I was just a kid. And to think that like understanding that brain's response on an action took me until I was 38 years old to finally take a grasp of that and say it wasn't you that wanted it, Trevor.
Jeez. How do you think that experience has maybe made you a better leader to some degree, if at all? I mean, I would assume there's some type of protective nature that comes from having experienced that you would just go to no ends to protect your guys. But I'm curious how it played out for you.
For me, it helps me understand where people come from in an environment that there's people coming from all walks of life.
Yeah, good point.
That I can relate to my guys and where they grew up. Most of the special operators have been through a tough childhood. That if you really get to sit down and talk to them how they grew up, not necessarily to my extent, but everything from alcoholic parents to being physically abused to living in trailers like I did, and being around homeless drugs and all this. So and then they come into these, amazing professional people, and they're like, but I grew up from this, so I had something that drove me to be the best I possibly could. And once I became that, there's no one could ever take it away from me. So it's this. So for me, it's this like I've proven so much that I can do when I felt like everyone hoped and not hoped, but I saw that people thought that I wouldn't be able to make anything of myself because of it. And I was just going to either commit suicide, be a drug abuser, or like drop out of high school, or become nothing in society. It's like all odds were against me from a young age. And so I've been trying to prove people wrong my whole life. Right. And that's just like, so that's where I see where I can relate to people. And it's not just Americans, it's going everywhere, to have just compassion for where people live and how they live. And it's just human beings out there trying to just do the best they can.
It's almost like a super level of empathy, I would imagine, that you can bring because of that. Speaking of the TED Talk, obviously seen by thousands of people, what was the reception of some of the folks, some of the other Green Berets or the people in your life? I'm sure there's got to be some good-natured ribbing, but also a lot of support.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything to my face that's negative about it. I think that'd be really hard to do. I think it's at this point right now in the military, guides need to know it's okay. Guys need to be shown by someone that nothing bad will happen to them, that they can go and share their story, that Green Berets and special operators need heroes that have been through hard things, and that they can show the world and to their brethren that it's okay to ask for help. And that's where like I have people telling me that you are telling how I feel inside. You're helping me create the story, the words of how I feel that I don't know how to express. And I think that if guys see it and hear it, that gives them it's okay for me to do the same. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, let's show and express what's happened to me. And it might encourage you to say, hey, these are avenues that I know can help me.
So it occurs to me I haven't exactly explained what the talk was on. And so I'd ask you to catch me on this. But effectively, it talks about the traumatic experiences that you had growing up. It talks about suicide, some of your time in the military, and how the trauma doesn't end. And then, as you just mentioned, at 38 years old, coming to grips with this, the compartmentalization, and addressing some of these demons. Is that an accurate description? How else might you characterize it for people?
That being human is painful, that everyone has pain, and pain equals being a human being to me. And so to not have pain to me is not to be a human being. So everything that you feel inside is natural and okay. And it has a purpose for that happening. That you don't need to push it away through drugs and alcohol, that there are people out there that want to help you, but nobody can read how you feel inside. No one knows what's going on inside unless you tell them. And that is your journey. That is your path to take, and no one else's. So that's pretty much. I wanted to show like these are the tools that really helped me. I had a lifelong journey to get better, and it's going to go on for the rest of my life. It's never going to just stop. I'm not going to, stop doing mindfulness, stop, taking care of me physically, eating well, sleeping well. All of those things are a part of getting better where we were neglected for so long. And so it's taking a choice for a lifelong journey, and to know that you're going to be okay if you ask for the right things. And we all screw up and things happen, but be honest about your mistakes, and nobody really cares. Like I don't know what this idea of stigma of what it is to seek for help, or someone's going to look down on you. Like everyone who's around you wants you here. Stop telling yourself these negative things. Like nobody, everyone wants to see us live a long, healthy life. I don't know, but and I get it though. I get where you can get stuck in a place where that's all you see is just darkness and sadness and zero worth, and not being able to provide and all those type of things. I absolutely can understand that and relate to that. But I always say, is that, let's see another sunrise, or let's go see another sunset. That's all I got to do is make it to breakfast, and I'll pass, and that's it. And it's like dive school. Like all I got to do is make it to the next meal, and I'm going to make it. That's it. I got 4 hours I got to get through, and that's it. Right now, I got four. It's just it's almost like I look at having kids. Like right now, when my kids are so young, these small little moments means everything to them. They have no idea because they haven't had enough experience in life to see that life is more than just this moment. And I think that's where guys get caught in. It's this moment is never going to end, and they can't see till tomorrow that it's going to potentially get better. And I think that gamble is worth it every single time. Because, I mean, your friends and family love you and they want you here. And I know that's hard to see sometimes in this field.
One of the things that you had mentioned earlier was that you wanted people to feel like they could share something like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that there was at some point a decision that you had to make. Do I do this now or do I wait till I'm out of uniform? And clearly you made the decision to do it while in uniform. Was there any thought, like intentionality behind that? Or did you just feel like I got to get this out right now?
Well, so it kind of happened because I committed myself to psych ward. And back in 2015, and I went there and I said these are all my problems, and it kind of boiled down to is that you drink too much, and if you just quit drinking, everything will get better. And I took the ownership of like, I got to get better for the men. I got to get better for the boys. I got to be able to go back to an O.D.A. and go back to combat. And so I didn't really express a whole lot, like outwardly to the guys that were around me, but definitely when I was at like behavioral health and stuff, I talked about the things as a kid. I didn't really go into the feelings of it, right? Of like why I felt weird about it or why the abuse was hard for me. I just said like, this is what happened. Just the event. Didn't really go dive deep into it. And so that's kind of like as that progressed. And then as I went down to Key West and I went to another facility here in Panama City Beach, is when I realized like I got to get better for me. And if the military doesn't want me, then they'll ask me to leave, or they'll do a medical evaluation board. One of those things will happen. But what it came down to was that the military they need good people. They need professionals that want to do hard, good work. And I was just like, well, I want to stay in the military. Where in the Army can you put me? I like going back into being a team sergeant wasn't in the cards at that point. But I was like, I'm smart. I have a master's degree. Like I can't kill any more people. I can't be around the violence anymore. But can I do something? And so that's when like, yeah, we're not going to try and pursue a med board for you. Let's send you to SOCOM. You're going to get, I got promoted and I was a first sergeant at the Sagittaf at the J3 in Fort Bragg. And
That's awesome.
Right. So it's not like, oh, we're just going to send you to nowhere land. Like we're actually going to put you in charge of real things, and to go from like drug and alcohol counseling, doing, depression, PTSD, all these things I'm doing, to go be a first sergeant for the rear detachment that of the headquarters that did the retrograde of Afghanistan. So like, I think it's all about how you want to show people what you want to do. And there's a lot of people got to give you a chance too. So a lot of what I've been throughout my whole entire career was because I had awesome leadership, and there was other people that stood up and fought for me because they believed in me more than I did. And it was absolutely incredible that people like, let's give this guy a chance. But I'm the one who had to show up and do the work.
It's pretty remarkable that you had leadership that I think many people might assume in the military, you can't go and kick down doors anymore. It's time to, we'll med board them out. It's great to hear that that's the environment, especially in that community.
Yeah.
All right. So now we've heard that there's a light at the end of this tunnel and there's some dark times to get there. If we go back Why choose the military for you, Trevor? What was the impetus?
Well, so I mean, there's a little bit of my family had some heritage in there. My grandfather was in World War II, kind of. I was an infantryman, two Purple Hearts kind of guy. My dad was in the service. My dad's dad was in the service, and so there's a little bit there, but it wasn't really ingrained into me. And then I was in college. I was drinking a lot. I had got a girl pregnant, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm like stuck in a spot. And then I'm also dealing with, like, I'm not really happy with me as well. But so I'm like I have to do the right thing as a man. And then this is a kind of a cool place where if something was to happen to me, then like my name has some honor to it. And so I was like, this is the perfect thing. The only problem was that when I walked into the recruiter's office, I got stopped by a reservist, and totally didn't see who I was, and the talent management was really bad at that point for who I was and what the potential I had into me. And so I go into the service being a 91 Mike, which is a hospital food service dietetic, right? So I go I have to go to 92 golf school, a cook school at Fort Lee, go to Fort Sam Houston, do that job. I chose that job because this is the job I did when I was in high school. So I was like, this is what I did. It's going to be easy. Training is just like make parade meals and things like that. So great. I did all that. I was like, great. And I get back to the reserve unit in Indianapolis, and I was like, these are not where I belong at. And I realized that when I was at Fort Lee, I was like, this is not where I'm supposed to be at all. I'm like, got on the wrong bus. The recruiter did not, it's like, dang it, man. And so it's all right. It happens. I get called up from the reserves to go to Iraq in 2003, and I go to Fort Stewart, and I see the bombs dropped on Baghdad, and I'm there, like, Rock of the Marne, and like all those tankers and all those light infantry guys. I'm like, these people this is their war right now that's happening. And I didn't get to go. They said, I didn't need your MOS. We're going to send you back home. And it like crushed me. And so I told my first sergeant and the commander, I was like, I'm done. I want to transfer to the National Guard. And so I had some friends that were in the 151st Long Range Surveillance Detachment. And I was like, these are more who I gonna want to be like. But the only opening that they had in the detachment was for 92 golf. So I got an in because I screwed up earlier in life and became a cook. So I was like, all right, sure. I'll be I was just an E4, and I was like, I'll go to here and do this. And then fast forward real fast, I would go to, to get called up to go to Afghanistan. And I go to 11 Bravo School, not at Sand Hill at Fort Benning. I go to Camp Robinson in Little Rock, and so I do all that training for a few weeks, and then we go to Afghanistan for a year. And that's kind of a fluke thing that happened as well to me, is that I showed up at the armory like 3 days before the report date, and the company commander, Sean Eakin, was like, this cook is here early. Like, what the hell is he doing? He's probably not even going to go. And then as the days went by, it's like, this guy wants to go more than anybody else. So I was like,
what were you doing that showed him that?
I just was there. Like, why is this kid here 3 days early? And it's like, he's motivated and he wants to be a part of us. And so he's like, I'm going to send someone else that doesn't want to go back home, and you get to come with. And so that's kind of how I got and then, so then we went to Afghanistan for a year, and which is not super eventful, but it was still being away from home.
Just a quick word from our sponsor, DeleteMe, and we'll get right back to this combat story. Back in my Intel days, I would have loved to have some sort of tool that would allow me to find information about myself online and remove it before it could be used by bad actors or even data brokers for their own purposes. DeleteMe will do just that. They'll find info about you that's online and remove it so it can't be surfaced. Now, it is possible to request data removal on your own and do it manually. That can be quite time-consuming and challenging. It's far easier to use DeleteMe, which knows all the sites to look at. If you're like me, you likely don't know all the areas of the web that could possibly be collecting your information, particularly which data brokers might be collecting that info that you don't think to look for. You can let DeleteMe take care of that. And what's a data broker, you might ask? These are corporations that collect huge amounts of personally identifiable information, or PII, as you may have heard, from a variety of sources like government public records and social media. They aggregate the data and then license and sell it to other data brokers or organizations with an interest in that data so they can market info to you or sell you something. We all have a right to stay private and protect our personal data. Head to joindeleteme.com/combat. That's joindeleteme.com/combat and use the code COMBAT for 20% off your plan and avoid being doxxed and harassed like what's happened to me, and don't let data brokers get their hands on your information. And now, back to this combat story. Let me ask you then. So you mentioned that you were crushed that you didn't get to go to Iraq. Why is that?
Because it's like what I signed up to do. It's what I raised my right hand and said, I'm willing to fight for America, and this is America's war, and I'm ready. I want to be there. I don't know myself now. Go back would be a different conversation with myself, but it's like it felt right to me. It felt like that's what America wanted, the response for everything that happened to us. And it felt very like nationalism and like patriotism. Mm-hmm. It felt just like, this is what young men do to fight for our country. It's just, I enjoyed being in the military. It was easy. It had structure and all this stuff, and I was like, it's not bad. And then it was kind of a big letdown. I was really upset about it, and so I kind of made some different choices so that wouldn't happen ever again.
Yeah. And you're saying when you went to Afghanistan, it was with this LURS unit?
Yeah.
And you were in an 11 Bravo role?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That sounds awesome. I mean, that sounds like if you got to be anywhere, that's a good place to be. But uneventful, you said.
Yeah. So the lineage of this unit is really spectacular, right? So they're the only National Guard unit that went to Vietnam. And
wow.
So being an airborne ranger there is significant. To who you are when you wear that Green Beret is different than if anywhere else in the National Guard. It felt like it's like we're the elite of the elite. That's what I thought.
Until you got into SOCOM.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, they still are. They're still the best soldiers, best leaders I've had since I was been in. By far. It's just that the 100% committed to everyone. Like everyone's focused together, did the same thing. We're like the best guys that as a whole, that I could ever have worked with, hands down.
That's great.
But Afghanistan at that time was like in the lull period, in 04, 05. I didn't get in any gunfights or anything like that, but I went to some really bad places that I would later on know that I went to. So Kabul wasn't so bad. Kia, whatever, Bagram, there's really not a lot going on. And we were just like the QRF for Camp Phoenix, for that little, like, I don't know, it's like a supply base or some stuff. They did some stuff with Black Horse up north, training the ANA. So nothing super, for me, it wasn't really significant. The biggest things that come out of that is two events where a National Guardsman deployed with us, drives over an anti-tank mine in Kabul and kills 4 people. And we as the QRF had to carry the body bags and stuff and put them onto the Kiowa, not the Kiowas, the 47.
Oh.
And they got their bodies, their remains got shipped up to Bagram. So that's a significant event for me. It's like, this is, people die.
Were they people you knew, Trevor?
Yeah. So there's a little bit of a story there, right?
Yeah,
that kind of haunts me is that, so one of the kids, Specialist Snyder, who is the driver, he also went to Camp Robinson, and he was like my bunkmate in a way. And I tell this kid, like, there's no reason you need to go to Afghanistan. Like, you're probably going to die. Like, this isn't for you. It's straight. Like, there's no reason you should be going.
You were telling him that? What? Yeah. Were you older than him or something?
Yeah, I think so. So I was 24 at the 23, and he's probably like 18. I don't know. I'd have to look at the news clippings and everything to remember everything. But yeah, so this guy gets 3 other people not killed, but like on accident. It's just after the winter time, like all of the old anti-tank mines had got washed up in Kabul, and they were looking for a range so that they could go do training on. And it's just an accident. It wasn't like an IED that was in place and that kind of thing. It wasn't any, at least from my knowledge of it, it wasn't a targeted event like some of the things later on in life. And so that haunts me, is that like I was like, I felt that like you shouldn't go, and now I'm like holding your body.
Right? I've heard from several folks that that's one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, was holding like the human remains component.
Yeah.
After something happens.
But so that's kind of the Kabul piece, but the Kandahar piece is way more significant for my further on career, which was pretty cool.
How so? Yeah, let's hear this.
So we went down there as a squad, and we ran the pay missions for the ANA for the O.D.As and for the French commandos at Spin Bulldog and down to Camp Price and near Lashkar. And we went up to the Arghandab River Valley. We went up to Camp Tice. This time, I don't know anything about any of those places. And like, we had light skin vehicles. We went up there with the Gurkhas, and they have just, the French open doors, everything. And I don't know, I'm just a saw gunner on top of one of these light skin Humvees, and I have no idea. We stopped at Gecko, and like we're working with the FBI guys and like doing some like I don't know if you found some caches or something that we were given some things there. Gecko turns into Mahalik later on, right there by the western side of Kandahar. And so I get to see kind of some of the different things that are happening, different types of agencies, OGAs, and SF guys. So you get the French commandos at Spin Bulldog. I get Green Berets at Tice and Price. And I'm like, these are the guys that I want to be. Like, where they're living, how they're living, that they're out by themselves. There's not a whole lot of people around, and they're running their own missions however they want. And I'm like, these guys are great. Like, I got to know more about this. But also, like, I got to see Robin Williams perform in front of Camp Brown, and that's the first time I felt like America came to Afghanistan. Like, that guy did it absolutely. He made you feel like you're American there. That's a cool YouTube video. I was able to find it. I was like, someone took a film of that.
I'm going to look for that. And I remember when I was years later, I guess it was 2008 in Salerno, in Coast, and Toby Keith was there. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, it's not Bagram. It's certainly not a FOB like you would have been on, but still like smaller. Yeah. He didn't have to come out there. It's just really cool to have been there and done that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
To see how the USO like can change your perspective on where you're living at that moment. And even if it's just for a half hour, an hour, I was like not there. And it was great. It's just like to laugh and to not think about like rockets or IEDs or being shot at. Like, it was really good. And all the cracks at Camp Brown, all the Green Berets that he's making fun of, I'm like, aha. And, so that's a late 04, and then 2010 comes and I'm there and I have a Green Beret and I'm like, I made it. And like, it's so cool. I was like, yes. So it's kind of neat to see like a lot of the places, and to know that I'm going to work towards something and then finally get there, even though, most people don't even ever make it that far. The percentage of passing and all this stuff is so low. And to become from a cook, to go from the reserves to National Guard, to go on to active duty, and then also to be able to go to all those places again, it's pretty kind of cool.
That's really special. I mean, as you described, looking at the Green Berets and some of the commandos and O.D.As, I'm wondering, when you were younger, did you not know enough about the military to know these existed? Because it sounds like the way you're describing it is you're slowly being exposed to different levels of this onion, basically, like as they peel back. You're like, oh, that looks pretty cool. Let me go do that.
Yeah.
So it was new each time.
For sure. So I think as I got on the LURS unit, like that's when I started to get exposed, like all the books that they had written about all the LURPs and stuff in Vietnam. So I started kind of diving into that lineage and learning about what's happening, and those things. And then like seeing like Nick Rowe's book, and you see how that was a Green Beret and the different things. And we had guys that were in Black Hawk Down in Somalia that were with us. And so you get that kind of perspective on things, and guys that were from Ranger battalions were all with us, and had done some, guys that were in the Gulf War. And I'm like, what, man, this is incredible. Now we're like going back to the same thing. And I think just having those people around sparks that idea of like, this is something you can do because it's just proximity.
It just a couple minutes ago, you made a reference that, if you could go back, maybe you'd have a different perspective on your younger self. But there is something like the way you talk about this profession and the SF side of things, like you could see the passion coming out of you as you talk about it. But I'm curious, like, are you conflicted on that because of the nature of that work?
I think I would have a real deep conversation about moral injury with myself and about what it's like to be a Green Beret, truly what it's really like, and what special operations really does, and how much of your kind of, I don't want to say like your soul, but a lot of your humanity is kind of stripped away from the different things that we have to go do and the way we treat different people because of their classifications and things like that. And so there would be like, you're going to lose your hope in humanity a little bit in this job. And I would want you to be more prepared for it than what I was. But that's like, you're going to do amazing things with amazing people. You're going to save lives, and you're going to impact things at a strategic level that me at 24 didn't understand at all. And I get to see that, especially as I move on, and a lot more out of Afghanistan. When I go to Africa, I really see the impact of what, like, we say this, intel drives operations drive intel, to see how that really happens, to come into fruition, to be like, you got something, you actioned something, and you saved lives. At an O.D.A. fire base level, you might see it like at a small village, kind of small area, but to say that you got something, you thwarted a terrorist attack in another country because you did something, like, that's pretty cool. And to be able to get to that point is pretty incredible.
That's so well said. We just had a woman named Nilufar Rahmani on here, and she was the first Afghan pilot in their
Oh, wow.
military. And so just like overcoming the odds to even get a shot at that was so challenging. Could only go to school because we were in that country. You know, like she never would have even been allowed into school. So her message throughout, and now she lives in Tampa, actually, married an American soldier, like made it out with her family. But
is she a Hazaran?
She
from
is
Bosnia?
Tajik.
So now, could you imagine if she, not to like put down anything, but if she was from like the Helmand, and if she was a Pashto, oh man,
yeah,
like this, like that impact is because she's from the north,
tremendous.
Right? That's it.
Yeah,
right?
She's from the north. Yeah.
And so for a woman to be able to do that, like, oh man, I bet she wishes that there would be, you know, where's the women standing up and let's fight for these gals to get some stuff done too.
Yeah. And the reason I say that is her message throughout this interview was thank you. Like she was a part of it. She was flying combat missions, but also like, hey, for every American who served over there, you completely changed my life and so many other people's lives. And you're right. It's hard to see when you're at that fire base. But anyway, just another perspective. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, I'm sure we can talk about my perspective on Afghanistan at some point.
Okay. Well, catch it. Yeah. When you feel it's ready, let's do it.
Yeah, not yet. We'll get there.
So you wrap up this deployment with this LURS unit, with this Gaurd unit.
Yeah.
Are you immediately like, all right, I've seen the other side, the grass is greener, I want to go SF, or does it take some time for that to happen?
I had to finish college. But what I did is that I was a history major, and I focused my studies on the Middle East. I was like, if I'm going to wait to go, I got to learn about the Middle East and the culture, and why they are the way they are in this sense. So I put a lot of effort in that. So I only had 3 semesters left at Purdue when I came back from that deployment to graduate. And so end of 2006, I got a DEP, delayed entry program. I got a release from the Gaurd. And then in April of 2007, I go on active duty as an 18 X-ray. And of course, I go to the MEP station and I was like, hey, I'm in E5, airborne qualified, CIB. I want to go to the 18 X-ray program. And they're like, nah, you can go to Fort Wainwright. We need an NCO there. I was like, no, I'm not going to go do that. I'm sorry. And I left. And so moral of the story here is go in what you want and leave what you want. And don't let the people on computer screens tell you different.
Yeah.
It's your life and your life only, not theirs. It's a decision that you're going to live with forever. And then I'm outside for like 15, 20 minutes. And like, all right, come back in. And lo and behold, I'm going to Fort Benning to be 18 X-ray. I'm like, yes.
That's
no,
great.
Thank you. And so that's how I kind of got, it wasn't, I knew that that's what I was going to do when I came home. But I had to graduate from college first because I felt that if I have this degree, it's going to open some doors, but it's one thing that someone can never take away from me. So I had to finish school. I didn't get the best grades. I never got an acceptance letter to Purdue, but I graduated. But it was a 7-year process to get my college degree, but I did it, and I knew it was going to pay some kind of dividends. I don't know how, but I figured that it would at some point.
Did it ever cross your mind to go the officer route, Trevor, or no? Was it like, nah, I know what I want?
Well, I was in ROTC, and I got back, and the commandant said, for you to go on to active duty. You're gonna have to do 4 semesters of contract cadet. And I said, I'm 26 years old. I'm not spending another semester at Purdue just to be an officer. I'm not. If SFAS and the Q course doesn't work out, like I'll just go OCS. I'll take my chances there, but I'm not staying another semester here. I've been in school since May of 1999, and I was done. I was like, I got to go. I got to get out of this place. And so I just got to Fort Benning, did our thing. Didn't have to go to Sand Hill. And I kind of trained with the Softleys, the SORB, Special Operations Recruiting Battalion kind of guys at their little thing. And we just trained, drank and trained. And then I came to Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty now. And then just waited to go and to start the process of prep for SFAS, which was pretty extraordinary kind of time. And a lot of good friends were made there before we got to go do the painful stuff. But it's not that bad, but it sucks.
Yeah, you mentioned before we started recording that you went through some of this with Kevin Flick, who we had on the program. He was the first person. I never heard the term Alive Day before.
Yeah.
You know, kind of really celebrating the day that you walked out of something that you probably shouldn't have. So it was pretty special to hear his story, but it sounds like you two were together for a while.
Yeah. Kevin and like the class that went to SFAS in August, September of 2007, like 77 people got selected, and I think 50 of us were from the SOPC Actine X-rays. And so like we dominated the class. And that kid used to be able, I know he can't run and ruck like he used to, but he is was a like specimen of a physical specimen. He's very smart. It's just too bad he had to go to first group. But yeah, I'm not sure when he got shot, but I know he was up at outside of conduits and stuff, and and that's a pretty incredible story to get shot by a PCAM and come out of that, and to see one of your good friends get hurt that bad and make it through it and go to MIT. It's like, see, there's you can get wounded and still do extraordinary things. And I think that's important to remember, is that injuries happen, but life can still go on. Like he didn't choose that, like, this is his identity for the rest of his life. It's just been, wounded Green Beret.
I've got a question for you on this, Trevor. So you go to training, like very intense training with these people. And you mentioned 50 of you all had come through this pipeline. And then you scatter to the different groups and parts of the world, and training and deployments take over. And then something happens like that to Kevin or to somebody else that you knew during that time. How aware are you when that happens? Or is it you're just moving so quickly you don't have time? It's like you might see it on Facebook years later.
So I was fortunately to get picked when I got the third group to be the RTO for the command team of the Siege of Soda in 2010. So my first 7 months deployment was at the Siege of Soda at the JOC, and I got to see all the con-ops, all the operations, all the missions that all my friends were on.
Oh, wow. It's a blessing and a curse, huh?
Yeah, so I would flip through all of the con-ops and read all the packs on everything, all the helicopters, who's where, and I would watch my friends be in gunfights for days. And I was like, it was hard.
Jeez.
So like even like, so the guys that were at like Camp Dwyer, like these guys went up to Bars Matall and were in a 21-day gunfight. And I just like, when is this red light going to turn off? Like they're getting shot at all day long. And that's like, I'm stuck here. Like, and I gotta go with this, the colonel and the sergeant major to go to fire bases and talk to people and do battlefield circulations. That my friends are up here fighting for their lives. What am I doing here? So that was that was a hard time that I see all my friends getting hurt and blown up by IEDs, and meeting my friends that had come in the country and shake their hands and then they die, and then I go to their funeral, and it's the saddest thing. And I'm like, I want to be there, but now but I got this job, and I'm happy for that. Not at the time, but the people I meet from that job is extraordinary. To meet like Austin Miller, Jeff Wright, all these guys that have become like, I flew around like 60,000 miles with Austin Miller and these guys, and I got to go to these funerals and these meetings and all these fire bases throughout the country and meet all of these wonderful operators and Navy SEALs and MARSOC guys and Green Berets, and see how they were living. Like, it was an incredible experience, but I was still mad that I had to go do it, that I wasn't on an O.D.A. But those experiences and those relationships made like are still impactful till today. And to see that, like, you know, Scotty was just a 1-star at the time, and to see that he was the U.S. 4A commander as a 4-star, and I'm like, that guy was like my hero in a sense, because like he would sit down and just talk to me as a person. I almost died with him, whatever. But yeah, we were out in Tactica, and a 107 hit like right by the airfield, or by where we're getting on some Blackhawks. And there was the most shrapnel I've seen just fly all over us, and I could just hear it all. I don't know if it was like airborne or where we were, but yeah, to just see like that kind of stuff happen is weird. And then to just like see him as a human, and not a rank, and know that he cared about us more than anything.
Can I
really
ask
cool.
you just about that, Trevor? So you're saying he was a 1-star at the time? Did I hear you on that?
Yeah.
What was it he would say to you when you'd sit down to talk? Because I feel like it's a good lesson for any leader at any level to just realize this impact you can have. Like, was it anything significant, or was it just, how are you doing? Like, talking about family?
Yeah, I would just like ask his kids how he was doing. Like, his kids wrestled and stuff, and I just tell me about life back home. Just talk to me about something that's not what we're going through right now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Jeez.
you're in charge of all these Green Berets and all these things, like all these special operators, but you're just a ranger. Like, and then I get to know, like, and he's a CAG operator. He's this, you know, Somalia, does all these things. And I'm like, whoa, it's like a lot more. But I'm just like, whatever. I'm just like, he's just a guy. Just like talk to him. Like, don't, like, they're all humans, right? We're going to go back to just like, they're all human beings that have a story that we just want someone to talk to. And so that kind of showed me, like, stripped everything down, right? I've lost this like really like anxious feeling with superiors. Like, just go talk to people. Like, oh, there's like, you know, how there's like this chitter chatter in the background. Like, we got to go tell the general, like, it's time to go, but nobody wants to go tell him. Like, just, it's okay. Like, doesn't, like, he's just checking his email. He just needs to know, like, hey, we got a boss, we got to leave. And so it's just seeing that kind of interaction, and just that, just being a person.
So just for people who are listening who aren't familiar, CJ SOTF being the Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force, so kind of higher level. You mentioned the JOC, the Joint Ops Center, where kind of the brain of everything going on, the screens, monitoring, the ConOps, or the concept of operations for these missions that are going on throughout the country. And it is pretty significant to hear, like, you had to look at, I'm sure it doesn't have their names necessarily, but you know the units and who's at those at any given time. So it's got to be tough to see.
Yeah. Because I feel like you could do more.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't be so bad if I was there. I would make it better.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. But I felt that way. Like,
right,
one more guy. Like, they only got 8 guys on the ground. Did you have a medevac? Like, what the, like, and then be like, all these bad things happen, and I'm here. I'm one more Green Beret that could go be a false multiplier, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm here just taking phone calls and giving people coffee. Okay. But but the leadership of Jeff Wright was awesome because he didn't really conversate about like the things that were happening in Afghanistan either. He's like, I want you to focus on your education. I want you to learn about economics. I want you to not worry about going to Halo school or dive school. He's like, go to ASOT things, go to things that are intelligent based, go do things that make you more valuable than these skill schools. Like, they don't really have a good parallel on the outside world. And so having a relationship with that senior advisor as a mentor when I first got to group was very significant.
That's great. I think everybody, like personally, I know this, but most of the folks who I've interviewed who have had to do these rotations at the headquarters level despise going, would rather be somewhere else. But in the end, invariably, it's a great experience for the network and just being around these decisions being made and how they're being made. It's a new look. So did you do that whole deployment in that setting, or did you get like 1 month where they dropped you down to an O.D.A?
No, I did it all there.
And is there some like understanding the next time you'll get it? You'll get to go in?
So when you're good at your job, they want to hold you. And then I'm a personable person as well. So it's easy to fit in that job when you can go talk to people and, do the bidding of the man, and people don't, and you're not afraid of talking to people and saying what's going on. But you just said something, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I was just wondering, so when you came back from that deployment, do you get a shot to be in an O.D.A? Like, you've done your time as good as you were at it. Hey, this guy now gets a chance to go and do the stuff we hired him for.
Yeah. So it's also, you might be the best guy, but you might only be the only guy that they have. So pick which one you want to think it happened. No, so I got back, and then I went to 4th Battalion and 3rd Special Forces Group on the Charlie Company. And I went to the 3435, straight to the dive team, which was cool. Kind of a cool little story that is there. I went to college with this guy, Justin Grant. And while he was a green and gold guy, whatever, he goes to dive school, and he's branch field artillery, but he was a tanker as an enlisted guy. And so if you're listening and like, and you're in college, or like someone saying that, if you go to dive school as a cadet, you'll never be a team leader on an O.D.A. Like, it's never going to happen, right? Like, why?
Why would they say that?
I don't know, because people are like, okay, you're not going to make it through the Q course, first off, as an 18 alpha.
Okay.
So they're like, no, that's not going to happen. So why are you going to go to this school? So Justin Grant's my first team leader that I went to college with, which is incredible, right? So that's like 2003 or 4, he goes on active duty, and now it's end of 2010, and I'm in the same room with him. It's so cool, right? It's very neat. But unfortunately, the talent of the company needed to be dispersed. So we had 3 18 Echoes on the dive team, and they're like, Trevor, you got to go to another team. And I'm like, all right. And so I go to 3433, some good leadership there. But then the guy who had taken my job at the Siege of Soda requested to go to this team I was on. And so I was like, dang it. And they're like, this other guy that's on the team, we can't move him because he's garbage. So Trevor, you got to go, because Jeff's saying AJ is going to take the job. And I'm like, okay, fine. And so then I go to 3431. And at that point we do, what did we do? We prepped. I did PMT with another team, and then got put on to 3-1. And then we went to Afghanistan in about February of 2011.
So just real quick before you jump into that, what is an 18 Echo for people listening? And you did go to dive school then?
No.
Okay,
I
so
didn't.
you avoided doing that. All right, got it.
It happens. It's a 18 Echo Special Forces communicator. And dive school happens twice, but it's good. But that's later on.
All right. Let's get to this next deployment then. So this with a new group of guys then, like you had bounced around to a couple different units and then you deploy.
Yeah,
which is its own challenge.
It's all in the same company. I'm just in a different room and down a hallway. That's it. And all the guys are phenomenal, right? Most of the guys have combat experience. Most of the guys have deployed on an O.D.A. So it wasn't really odd to go into their second, third trip for all of us. But for most of us, it's going to be our first trip on an O.D.A. kind of a thing. Except for like our 18 Charlie, who Magnus Johnson, if you know who he is. He's the CEO of Mission 22. So all of us go. This is probably the hardest deployment I have on hands out. This third deployment, and I was there from February until February, January, March, I think maybe until December. So it's a really long deployment for an O.D.A. At this time. The surges going on in Afghanistan, and there's a lot of fire bases and a lot of things, but we're on the Western Afghanistan, about 50 kilometers north of Farah, in this place called Kaki Safed, and it's about 100 miles east of the Iranian border. We had about 200 kilometers of battle space that we had to cover. 10 guys, about a platoon's worth of Calf Scouts, 19 Deltas. We had another platoon of A&A with us. And we also would make a checkpoint about 10 miles south of our main fire base. And we would stay there for about 30 days at a time. It all kind of happens. And so we spent a few months kind of pushing out all of the Taliban and all of the negative people that are influencing the area. And so this first patrol, we kind of go on, we relieve, I think some of the guys that were working up at Shindam, and we clear this village. And as I had cleared the southwest side of this village, our medic, Jake Livingstone, and I are standing on top of this building watching everybody come through the village. And that's when I hear this boom, and I talk about, the smoke coming up in the air. And I was like, it was weird because you could see it happening, and it sounded weird because Peltors and stuff, I hadn't really been into like significant like things blowing up or, rounds or anything like that hadn't happened to me at this point. And then I just hear gunshots and, Afghan soldiers been vaporized, all happening. Taliban guy shoots girl in head. They're all the boys are downtown in the bazaar kind of area, and we're like overwatch for it. And so me and Jake are just sitting there. They're like, "What are we gonna? We're gonna hold here. We're gonna stay here." And all this, all this stuff's happening to my friends. And so it's like, what do we do? So they patched her up and saved the girl, and that was the beginning of a really rough summer. But I don't have like hours long gunfights. I don't have like, multiple KIAs and stuff. We didn't lose any of our guys. We didn't lose Americans. We lost, the Afghan National Police guys ran over IEDs, and we lose A&A guys, but all of us don't get hurt significantly. No one dies, I'll say that. But we hit a lot of IEDs, and we got ambushed a few times, but it wasn't like clearing door to door to door to door. We didn't have that kind of thing. It was indirect fire that would happen. And it's just like, you never know when you're going to die kind of the thing. And you lose that fire to live kind of gets put away and smothered. So to wake up every day and kind of go out and patrol is a thrill, is a never know what's going to happen. Every day there's something new. There's a new problem to be solved, and for some reason the Americans are the ones that can solve it. It's the way it just seemed. But it's the loss of life, the humanity of people kind of being, their souls being thinned out. And it's like, I can't worry about coming home. It's too much effort to do it. I can't invest in two places at one time, because if I do that, I felt as if I wouldn't be as good as I could. And I had to take the fire to live and put it aside, cover it up, because I couldn't face it, because it would make me too concerned about every day, every step, every house I went into, every person I met, everything it would overwhelm me, overtake me. And you just bury it, like bury that care. And then I really felt that kind of come back to me, like as I'm flying home. But then as I'm like, as the time and deployments go on, I feel like the distinguishing of that fire happens earlier and earlier before I get there. And I just don't care anymore. And then that's, in a way, that fire to live just never comes back anymore. And you're kind of lost.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on this. Thank you for kind of sharing it the way that you did. Do you feel, I guess you kind of answered this, that it doesn't really come back? I kind of feel that way as well, where there's a certain point where you just come to grips with the fact that you just might not make it home.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever get back to that original level again. Like you're operating at a deficiency to some degree, but have you, some of the work you've done, have you felt an ability to build it back up, I guess?
Yeah. So like the fire in me to go to SFAS has gotten back into me. But I had to do a lot of hard work. I got treatments done. I had spent a lot of time finding something else to love. Like I put time and effort to get into the next who I am, the next fire inside me, the thing that kind of wakes you up every day. Is I put a lot of effort and time into that prior to retiring. So it's crucial that I was like, I have to know what I'm going to do. I have to know what I'm good at. I have to know why I will be impactful to other people before I leave it, because it's going to take a long time to hone the skills of what I want to become. You know, if I'm going to be an author, if I'm going to be a speaker, if I'm going to be do workshops about trauma and all these things. Like I got to develop that craft now, prior than trying and figure that out, because it doesn't just happen overnight. We want to believe it does. Like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to love it. And all the things that you have to do to become into that kind of new role isn't something that happens in even a year or 2 years. It takes a lot of hard work, and might as well do it now while I'm getting paid, And so it makes it a lot less stressful than it would probably be later on.
You mentioned that particular deployment was the hardest you had. And then you almost describe it as lackluster, which I do not believe it is, but I think you're comparing it to maybe some Hollywood version of something dramatic. It sounds tough, though.
So, like, I used to see my guys that up in Bars Metal. I see my guys at Ballymore Gob. I see my guys in Sangan and Fob Robinson. I see my guys in the Hellman. and all these places that fought every day. As soon as the sun came up, they were banging away, 107 high Mars in a week. Like, I didn't live that life, but I know people who did. I know, and it's like, I compare myself to those guys, which I know is so minute. There's just very little guys that had that, but I'm like, I didn't do that, what they did. So I'm like comparing myself to that. But it's just hard. I don't know. I don't think enough bad things happened. No way. Right? I don't know.
Why do you say that was the hardest deployment though for you?
Actually killing people. Having to pull a trigger and watching people die and know I did it. Putting other human beings in a firefight and not knowing if they're going to make it. And knowing, like, I planned it, I walked it, I put these people in a bad spot because we were trying to do something better. And to get ambushed and the possibility of an American getting hurt was me and only me alone. Because I was like, I would run. So when we were at the checkpoint, I would send my own missions up to the headquarters, and I wrote all of it. The con ops. I did it all myself, and I had a controller with me, but I had 10, uplift 18, 19 deltas to Calf Scout, and me, no other Green Beret, and 40 AMP, maybe a little mixture of A&A every once in a while. And so I would go on patrols with these guys by myself. And it was me. I'm the guy that's doing all these things, that's saying where we're going to go, how we're going to do it, what we're going to take with us, what I think is going to happen. And it's all on me. But like, I truly believe that I got to be a Green Beret that I don't think a lot of guys get to have. And so it's super hard, right? Because I am running this like mini war conflict, but then I kind of feel like Colonel Kurtz at the same time, where I'm like the lord of this, the power that it's there. And it's really difficult to kind of remember who you are. You start to fade away because you're there and that's it, and you have a lot of power. But to lead people in battle, to be shot at and still run through gunfire, and to look behind you and to see grown men following you, I don't know how much more to be alive there is than that. It's incredible. Like that's what I want to go back to. That's what I miss.
So I really would love you to tell that story, because when I read that line, it like really hit me in a positive way. Yeah. But just so I'd love for you to tell that story. Just how did you get to this open field and people running behind you? But also, did you say that you were the only Green Beret there? You didn't have any other members of the O.D.A.?
No.
Wow. And presumably when you said you got to be a Green Beret, this is like this idea that it's you are running the mini war. You've got the force multiplier capabilities with you. You got U.S. military attachment. You've got local nationals. Is that what I'm interpreting correctly here? Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so how this kind of day occurs, it starts approximately like 3 a.m, right? At that time in the war, mischievous me, you couldn't leave the fire base or wherever you were working out of in the time of darkness, right? So I write it so exactly at sunrise we're gonna, step off from our checkpoint, but I'm like, there's no way we can make it to this next village without us anyone knowing we're there. So I'm like, I'm going to take a chance. And I leave 3 hours before sunrise. And while I'm walking, the guys at the checkpoint call up to the SOTUS and say, hey, we're stepping off. So I'd already got like a 3-hour head start. Luckily, nothing happens. We get to the outskirts of this village. I set up a casualty collection point where I pretty much stuff all of the machine guns, snipers, medics, and some of the leadership from the Cap Scouts there. And I take like a handful of their guys with me, the controller, the Air Force JTAC, and about 30 of the AMP guys. And we walk through this village, and it seems fine. The sun's coming up, not a big deal. And as I'm like walking to the southwest side of the village, there's this like wall of just a mud wall, and the JTAC stopped there. And I turn to my left, and I look in this room, and it's like a diesel generator. So it's really loud in there. And I'm like, I walk in there, I'm just like seeing if anything's going on. And as I like turn around, I just see all these like pops of like dust coming. Like, what the fuck is going on? And Sean, I think his first name was the controller, and he's just standing there. Like, he's like looking at the sky. And I'm like, what is he doing? Like, and as I pull out, I realized we were getting shot at by a guy in a PKM. So he's shooting at us. The checkpoint gets ambushed, and they're shooting all the machine guns and all this stuff's going on. And that's like 500 meters behind me. I can't see them because we're in the middle of the village. And to about 100 meters to my left, there's a cemetery, and then there's another like cluster of buildings a little bit farther down. And so I'm like, oh, fuck it, I gotta go. So I bound to the cemetery, right? And I get there, and some of the uplift kids come up, and I see this this kid Keating. I look at him, and I'm like, where the fuck is your helmet, man? Like, dude, we're getting shot at. And he's like, fuck, I don't know. I was like, all right, be safe. All right. And so then at that moment, I was like, cross the field, right? And then I can hear and see like the plumes of dust. Rounds are getting shot by me. The fucking JTAC standing there like he's being in the orchestra. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, call the SOTUS, get, A10's on station, whatever, what's going on? And so he's in another world, which is really cool to see happen. It's like, just kneel down. But no, I don't know. He's like calling, all this stuff. So we hit the village, and then we kind of bound in. Like, as I said, like I look behind me, and I just see these men following me. And I'm like, this is incredible. Absolutely amazing experience. So we bound through the buildings, and we're still getting shot at. And I'm seeing like the 203 rounds from the Afghan are hitting around this guy. And as I pull up and I look at him, my interpreter, and I say, who is this guy? And they're like, and they ask the AMT, and they're like, and it's weird. And the guy goes, "That's my brother." And I was like, what? And as I look up to shoot, it's just like, I just see the rounds go through his body. I was like, this is wild. And so we go search the guy, and he had all kinds of IED making material on him. And so I blow all that stuff up. And then another A&A counterpart was coming from the south, and we had discovered this massive IED that was in the middle of the road. And so now we just all got in a gunfight. The guys at the CCP shot like 2 guys. They all got like dragged off. I don't know. This guy is there. I got an IED. I have the SOTUS on the fucking bitching at me, the thing that I'm outside the ops box. And I'm like, what do you mean outside the ops box? There's no lines on the road. What do you mean? That we were getting shot at, and you tell me I prosecuted a terrorist, and now you're getting upset with me because I'm outside of some imaginary line that I don't know. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm like, forget that. A10s, get off station. We don't need you. And so then So we blow up this IED, everything's fine, and then I get to see like and so this is like a bit of my humanity gets lost in me a little bit. Is this like they just throw this dead body in the back of these A&A Humvees, just like a dead dog. And I was like, okay, but I see that and I'm like, okay, whatever. And so, but we make our way back to the checkpoint, and now the guys are good and everything, and we have like a little rendezvous with all the A&A and AMP and all the soldiers, and they give me this like bowl of like milk stuff, and I don't know what it is. It's like they take this goat milk or hard ball and like rub it in the bottom of a pan, and they liquefy it, and they're like, you have to drink this, like you're a part of us, kind of thing, and like oh my god, and like flashbacks of like Robin Sager happening, like doesn't matter what you think, you just gotta do it, right? You gotta take it. I'm like, whatever, and it's like this salty milk. I'm like, oh, it's so bad, but whatever, man, fine. And then it's like we all walked back to this, the checkpoint together. It's like the sun setting, and it's like the heroes of the day happen, and none of us got hurt, and the heroes won that day, and it was incredible, like to have this all day event happen, and to all of us like walk together as men, as one, was really cool kind of, event to say that like it wasn't Afghans or Americans, it was just guys trying to stay alive.
And what could be more Green Beret than these local nationals after a battle? Like, hey, drink or consume this thing that makes you one of us.
Yeah. That was good. That was fun.
Awesome. Hey, so a couple times you've mentioned a little bit about the mentality, losing your humanity to some degree as you witness these things.
Mm-hmm.
It occurred to me when I joined the military, obviously I went the pilot route, very different than what you did. There was, I don't remember the screening for that mentality. I assume there's something along the way that they're looking at that, but I don't remember it as directly. When I went to the CIA, they spent a lot of time in that during the interview process, trying to understand and it's not the killing piece, but it's, can you deceive somebody and know that you are about to do something to them that they don't want to do and you're manipulating them? And some people do. They say, I'm not cut out for this.
Yeah.
Do you remember, was that something as part of that process for you that you recall?
No, I don't think so. I think there might be a little bit at SEER school, but I think that being someone else was easy for me.
In the training environment, being someone else?
Yeah, even in Afghanistan, like I was so good at kind of like pulling myself away from who I was because I was this stuff when I was a kid. But I also believed in what I was doing meant something. I saw the things I would make was making a difference, and if I had to be a little skewed to do it, I didn't. Because I felt like it was the right thing to do. Not like I'm going to do this for the better good of more of the people.
Yeah,
I'm going to do this to keep my guys safe, and that other people won't get hurt. So if I have to, set up C4 in the middle of the night and then come back the next day and say, we found IEDs in your village, why are you doing this? Why are you allowing the Taliban to come in at night? We're going out at night and finding these things, even though they were not, it was all a lie.
Yeah.
So I would do things like that so that like we were like make noise, shoot our guns at night and say, hey, why are you harboring these people here?
Yeah.
And they'd like, what do you, and they're like, okay. And then over time, they're like, let me tell you what's going on. And that's what you do.
To win them over. Yeah.
Yeah. But Ryan, like I want to say telling my story, but I see and know how the way I talk to people impact them. Because when I went to rehab, like I would tell stories like this and how it made me feel, and like my perspective on it, and guys would open up. And they'd be like, this is what happened to me when I was a kid. And I'm like, that's it. And then so that at that moment, that's when I realized, like, I don't care what they do. The military tells me if they say like what I'm saying and what I'm doing is wrong, because I see it's right.
Yeah, the good it does everybody else to hear it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I wanted to touch on here, because what struck me during your TED Talk, and just fact check me if I get this wrong, but it sounded like you had dealt with suicide ideation at a young age, probably largely misunderstood to some degree given what happened. But it doesn't end in your childhood. It sounds like it's kind of throughout your career. As we talk about some of these deployments, do you notice those feelings while you're downrange? Is it when you're back home? How does it show in your life at that time?
So I used a little bit of like prescription drugs while I was there too. So a little bit of diazepam and a lot of like Nubane. It's a synthetic opiate to kind of numb a lot of the things that were going on. But the suicide stuff was more when I came home and drank a lot as an adult. During that time is when it and it starts to significantly get bad as after my like 5th deployment, because I kind of stepped away from the team.
Jeez.
And I wasn't relied on as much, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm drinking more and it increases it. But so binge drinking and stuff would increase the suicidal ideations a lot. And I significantly remember when I knew it like sparked the most was in 2015 when I was going to the National Defense University getting my master's. And I started to learn a lot about politics in Washington. And what I was learning and that what I was hearing is that Washington doesn't give a shit about us. We are just leverage for them to impose our military and will onto other countries, and they don't care who does it. And it ripped me apart. And so,
really,
yeah, that the military is just leverage, and they don't care who does it as long as there's someone there. And I was like, the Senate, Congress, the president, they don't really care who we are as a single person. They just care as a whole that we can go do things. And so those feelings on top of alcohol didn't add well.
No.
At all. And so I just have this, like, I almost like deceit from our politicians. That's kind of how it starts. And then it's this moral atrocity, moral injury things that are going on. I think there's a lot of, I didn't have a lot of time home during these, like from 2010 to 2014. So I got married in December 2009, right? So 2009, I get married in December. In the next 3 years, I spend 25 months in Afghanistan, right?
Jeez.
And that's not, pre-mission training. That's not doing things at Bragg. It's not, any of those things aren't there. So I don't really see my wife. And so that dynamic is a difference that I'm back home a little bit more. My wife's pregnant. Like, we have our first child. And so those family dynamics change. And so it starts that happens, like, I feel like there's something wrong inside me. So I'm getting like testosterone tested. I'm getting all my blood levels, things, B12, like having sleep studies, like all that, like what's wrong with me? And so just, I'm confused about how I feel in my own skin. And I spend a lot of time away from like the unit, I would say, from third group, from the guy. Because for some reason, I don't know what it is or why, like I never got attached to anyone on a team that I was like best friends with, that I wanted to hang out with. Just never happened. I don't know. I don't know if it has to do with my friend committing suicide in college or what it is. I don't know, like if that's part of it, or if I wanted to be disassociated, detached from the military after I left. I think there's a bit of both in there. That's like, I wanted to leave the Green Beret in the team room, and I didn't want to bring it home with me in a way. Like I didn't want my wife to marry a Green Beret. I wanted her to marry me, and this is who I am, and that other stuff is over there, and we don't bring in the house, kind of a thing.
It's interesting. When I got out of the Army after 8 years, it was 2009, so it was earlier on, and I desperately wanted to make this clean break from the military. Like I had just come back from Afghanistan. I had a wife and one son at the time. Let me just go back and be a normal person. And I think one of the things that I tried to suppress that didn't work for me was this military side of things. I didn't stay in touch with people. I didn't stay connected to the community. I took all the stuff that's behind me now and threw it into a closet. And I was like, that's much like you're describing, like I need to keep that separated. But over time, for me, that's how I grew up. Like I grew up wanting to serve and like be a part of this. And I read those books that you were talking about, and like, I talked to my dad about his time in Vietnam, and not to glorify it, but just like as a path, I think. And so when I got out of the agency the next time around, that's why I started this pod. Like the two reasons I started it were for me personally to stay connected. And the second was exactly what you said about politicians, where if only one politician listens to this thing and thinks 20 more seconds when they make a decision that impacts people like you, I would be happy. Like to understand what you actually go through when you're away from family and you're pulling the trigger. I just wish that there was more insight or curiosity there. And I don't know how much there is. Anyway, it's a very interesting, approach that you've had to deal with. How do you feel about the separation now?
Oh, really good. But I went to rehab. I did the Janus program. I went and did ketamine. I did a stellar gangway block. I continued to work on things that are going to benefit me for the future. So it's been a process of slowly pulling me away from it. And so I've got to the point where I really don't feel much as a soldier anymore. Like I can advise and I can fill out paperwork and I can approve leave forms and things like that, because that's like what I'm doing right now. But I'm not going to the range and shooting guns anymore. I'm not jumping out of airplanes. I'm not that role and that identity. I've chose to not do those type of things anymore. And so I think I'm at a point where I'm happy that the process is going to be another 18 months, because I have a lot of things I still need to work on, like medical stuff and that, and preparing myself for this next portion of my life. But I'm really excited to be done.
Yeah. You mentioned, so we'll come to what's coming on that, given how tough, but you mentioned dive school, and I want to make sure we touch on that. I've heard it's incredibly is, or at least how I've never 2 shots at it. I'd love to hear this.
Yeah. So after my third trip to Afghanistan, I went to dive school. And I was in the July class, which is the cadet class. And there was like 60 plus people there. Well, I made a bad decision to get there on a Friday night and go down to Duval Street and drink heavily for 3 days. And then I showed up, and then I failed the pull-up portion of it, of the PT test that you have to do down there. And so I was like a day one drop. But like significantly, I needed a fail in my life. I needed to see that I got, other than going to language school, which was horrific for me, I hadn't failed anything ever. I show up, I perform, I pass. And this is the first time it brought me back to reality of you have to prepare for things. You have to be ready for things, and you just can't grind it through and be a drunk. It's not going to work. And so then I went back to Afghanistan, back to the same place for a little bit, and then we went down to Lashkar. But so then we go back, and then after that deployment, I learned my lessons about what I did. I went straight to the barracks down in Key West, and I passed the whole thing. But I needed to be brought down a bit from my head being too big. And I think it really taught me that at any time you can fail if you don't put enough work into it. Yeah. Dive school is great though. I don't think the Green Berets will ever go into like a underwater kind of infill, but those are the best soldiers in America's Army, hands down. Yeah, because they got no quit in them. Like that guy's willing to give like all the oxygen in his body to win. He will suffer more than any person on this planet. It's just who they are. And that's what they're breeding there. And it's not measurable. It's not quantifiable. You can't say like that's the better soldier. But I say that it's like the guys that went to airborne school. They were an easy company in World War II. They're just a cut above for some reason. They're just better.
That's awesome.
Like something in your brain like changes, and like you will fight harder. You will want to save people if they're hurting. Like you will make sure that your equipment's better than anyone, because that stuff, if you don't take care of it, you'll die, and it happens fast. And so to be able to go down there and be an instructor was awesome, because I got to see some really incredible people do some phenomenal things.
So from an outsider's perspective, I would imagine Q course selection is one of the hardest things you could do. What is it that happens in dive school?
The beginning part is it's all you, right? And before, like in selection, like it's you, like, but it's just a compass, and you get to walk, and it's on you. It's your time. We're there. If you're not physically fit, if you don't have a strong mind, like you can't learn that. You just have to have it. And the different tests that they give you, it's very fast paced, and it's in that beginning portion, like the one man competency test, like it's you. You have to figure out a problem all on your own, and you can't breathe. And you have to listen to instructions. You have to do what you're told, and you have to stay calm. And it's you against yourself, essentially. And so can you beat your mind in a way to just get to the point where like I'm so relaxed that this doesn't really matter. And then you dive, and then it's just you and another guy underwater in the middle of the night. You can't see anything. And that sole person is the thing that's going to keep potentially save me if something bad happens. So that trust is so grown into you that guy with that bubble, will save your life if something bad happens.
Wow.
It's because that's it. It's just you two guys on a nylon cord together at 25 feet, 20 feet underwater. And like nobody knows where you're at. There's no bubbles. I can't hear you. It's like you could just pass out in an instant and you just go drag me to the depths of the ocean. And I have to know how to bring you back up safely and get help. And that I'm going to put all that trust into another person is pretty powerful. But most of those guys don't think about it like that when they're there.
No.
Like this is
later.
This is what I see after later on being an instructor. Like this is why being so hard on them is so important. Is because that's all they got.
Having been an instructor there, would you be able to look at maybe a group of candidates who are there, like just starting out, and pick out the ones that are going to make it or not? Or is it just because it's so mental, it doesn't matter what they look like, you just have to see them when they're in the moment?
On the land, it doesn't matter. You got to put them in the pool. And once you see them in the pool, you know if they're supposed to be there or not.
You can tell pretty quick.
Yeah. We do this thing called the Yellow Brick Road. Down there, they put all the guys on one side of the wall, and they have to basically push this 20-pound weight over their heads. They have a weight belt down to 16 pounds, and they have to fin in the water and keep their heads above the water. And it's a very, very cardio and intensive event where you can't grab the wall, you can't pass out, like you have to stay up. And it's after 90 seconds of this, like all you want to do is quit. And it's doing several things, right? So we're seeing the capability of your cardiovascular system and see if your heart wants to kind of give out under high stress, high heart rate. And also it's evaluating you as a person and to see that if you have a quit in you. So it's just designed to increase anxiety, increase heart rate, the fear of drowning. All of it's happening to you at one time, and it's exhausting. And we make them do it a lot. And you can tell, like I can see it. I can see if like a person is going to make it or not. But there's a bit of biology and genetics that play a part in it too. So if you're like 5'5", 105 pounds, or you're 6'6", 280, it's a bit different. But I was able to see it's significantly harder, but I could tell who's putting out effort and who's not. And like you're at a disadvantage because of your genetic makeup, and that's not your fault, right? Like you can't do this event because your body's not designed to do it. But I can tell that you are willing to give your life for another human being, and that's what I'm looking for. So if I keep putting you back into the same thing, it's insanity. Your body's just going to give up on you. And I'm not going to do that to you, because if I do this 5 more times, you're just like, I don't have the power in my legs to keep it going. It's just, I'm exhausted. And so why keep retesting exhaustion? Like doesn't seem fair to me. And so I could tell, like, I would pull guys out of the pool and be like, you're not going to do this anymore. Like, you've shown me that you are willing to die in this pool, and that's it. And you're still here, and you're still trying, and you didn't quit. Okay, like that's honorable, and it doesn't. You don't see it very often, but when you do, it's like, bring a tear to your eye that, like, there's people out there still willing to give everything for a silly badge. But
Jeez.
it's really cool. And I was the primary instructor when Nick Lavery went through, and to see that man was absolutely incredible. To see how
Can
much
you, for
that
people
guy
who don't
fought
know who he is,
to
can
be
you talk
there.
more about him?
Yeah. So Nick Lavery got shot in his leg multiple times on a green on blue incident in Afghanistan. I'm going to say like 2012, maybe. But he's above the knee amputee. He literally has like maybe this much of a nub on his right leg. And so he doesn't have any muscle in one of his legs to use to fit. None. He's 6'6", 6'8", something, 280 pounds. And he's the first above the knee amputee to go back to Afghanistan on an O.D.A. He's currently a warrant officer of 5th Group. And that's when he came down to dive school. So to see a guy go through a school that's for two-legged people is pretty incredible. But so the scene in the pool was awesome. But the piece that I don't think a lot of people know and is the like compassion that he has. So I and my kids would go to the pool on the weekends, and he came down to like row or work out on the pool deck. My kids went up to him like, "What happened to you?" And like for him to be gentle with my 3-year-old and 5-year-old and be like, bad guys shot me and I lost my leg. And to see how kind he was to someone and so open about what he went through, I was just like, I really appreciate your honesty to my kids about what you went through. Means a lot to me.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah, and it's incredible. We had to like manipulate some things so that it made sense for him. But we worked together to get him through the standards that we had at the school. There was no.
You probably didn't bend the standard for him, I'm guessing.
No. We tried it.
Damn.
It wasn't. We tried to make it as if he had 2 legs, right? And things, but it's like the amount of oxygen in your body is different because you're missing a whole entire leg. The blood is different in your body, and so and the way he had to take tests was different than anybody else because he couldn't balance on 2 legs, and so how much he's working with his body is different than anyone else. And so there's this a lot of those things came into play with him being down there, but it shows me that if you try hard enough and you want something bad enough, you can achieve anything in your life. And that guy is, incredible.
It's like you need a reminder of that every now and then. I can't even imagine as an instructor to see it progress through what is very painful.
Yeah.
Look, I'll get you out of here in a second, Trevor. One thing I wanted to really touch on, though, was this idea of maybe the moral injury that you brought up. One of the things I try to ask everybody at the very end typically is, as you look back on your career and all the pain and sacrifice and challenge and loss, would you go back and do it again? And I'm curious how you might answer that given what we've talked about already.
I think it's necessary for me to do it again because who I am today is because of the choices I made. And the things that have happened to me in my life make me more compassionate, make me listen better, let me allow to take a second and think about what's going on. That a lot of bad things happen fast, but it's maybe not as bad as you originally see it. Gather more information about the situation and don't react. just instantly like let a lot of things with my wife. I'd like let it play out just a little bit. Let's see what's going on. Let's not get just let it go. Let's see what happens. And so being more reserved and less reactive and maybe just a little bit more proactive on my life. I think all the care that I got from being in the service has been phenomenal. The outreach that I had, I don't think I would have been able to get the services and treatments if I wasn't in the Army. And so I'm grateful for that. So I try to tell myself that this is a small block of my life, and there's a lot more life to live after this. Continue to grow from which you were, and be honored for the things that you're able to do. And I affected things that are astonishing, and the impact of soldiers' lives that I've had and their families have been incredible. So like it's all the sadness and all the things it's there, but it's easily notice the bad things first. And then, but if you're like, tell me the good stuff like that, and you ask me like, tell me like something funny and stuff like that, man, I really don't have a lot of stuff that's funny. Why don't I remember the funny things as well as I remember the bad times? And so I would want to tell myself like, spend some time, remember the good times, Trevor, because you need to know those exist too.
Yeah. No, that's a great point on that. One of the other questions I ask everybody is when you were downrange on missions or maybe back at the FOB, was there anything that you carried with you that had sentimental value, good luck charm, something that somebody had given you that you just wanted on your body?
Oh no. I would need to think about it. I don't know. I've been wearing the same like Black Hawk belt my whole career. I've had one belt for
that counts.
the whole time. It's gone through everything that I've ever gone through. And I got that when I went to my first deployment in 2004, and I've had it ever since. And I think that's like probably the one thing that I have that I always have had on me throughout my whole career.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, some people it's like they don't have anything. Sometimes it's like St. Michael's medallion or a picture of a family member. You just never know. And then I guess you mentioned you've got 18 months left in the service, and you're already, it sounds like, planning what's next. What do you see as next? Like if you and I sat down in 10 years, what are you hoping has happened by then?
Book tours, speaking engagements, helping nonprofits generate money to give service members that are currently serving and veterans access to the care that I had, that the destigmatization of getting help, that I don't want to just say Green Berets, but service members know that it's okay to talk about how they feel inside, and that their career won't be lost over it. That there's people's stories, every story matters. They just need to get better at telling it, and it's just practice. My kids are in college. I'm still married to a girl. I think that's super important to me. That joy is there, and I know what that is. I know how to get that. I know how to stay healthy, and that the choices I've made to find a path of good health continues to work for me, and that, I've grown out of the past, and like, I'm be proud of what I've done, but it's no longer who I am.
Perfect. And depending on when people listen to this, keep an eye out for a book one day.
Yeah, that's right. I hope so. I hope we can work on. Hopefully, I can get. I just don't really want to self-publish. I want to be able to put it more in the hands than that option does. But always working on that, and I think that's a really good phase of life kind of story of as just being a kid, Middle Ages, and as I had children and got married. I think there's a lot of life lessons in there that people can pull throughout your life that they can yes, pretty good point there, Trevor.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Trevor, thanks so much for the time. We'll have links to, obviously, to the TED Talk, some of the other items that you mentioned. I'm going to hunt for that YouTube video with Robin Williams. But,
it's out there.
I wish you nothing but luck and the best next 18 months as you transition out, and then a lot of luck on the outside helping people, which I'm sure you'll do. Thank you for the time.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan, for having me, and I really appreciate your time.
I hope you enjoyed that combat story. This one, we only had a chance to interview Trevor because of Jay Dorlius. So I wanted to read a couple listener comments from that episode, this recent episode, in fact, from just a few weeks back. For those who don't recall, Jay was also a former Green Beret and met Trevor in that line of work. I will say, just before we get into these comments, thank you for listening. If you could take the time to subscribe, give us a 5-star review. That would be very helpful in driving this podcast forward and getting these stories of sacrifice and challenge and overcoming adversity to so many more people. And it would be greatly appreciated. With that, a couple comments. One, the first, actually, two, are from Romeal55, a subscriber on YouTube. And he says about the Jay Dorlius interview. He says, I was at FOB TK from 2009 to 2010. I worked a little airfield and supported some SF guys downloading planes. I remember I was on the SF compound and heard some wild stuff over the radio. And those are the things that are hard to imagine until you're on one of these small FOBs and everybody's doing everything and you're real tight knit. Regardless if you're in the SF community or not, if you're supporting them, you end up just being a part of that ecosystem for that time downrange. And then he says again, as an Army transporter, those were some rough times back in 03 and 04. I got to Kuwait in January of 03, just chilling in the desert thinking we weren't going to war. I remember talking to some Navy Seabees, and they kept telling me we were going, that they were going to be the first ones over the berm. Well, 3 weeks later, boom, I'm on a convoy to Iraq supporting the British on the 3rd day of the war. 20 and done, but I do miss it. 20 and done, obviously being the 20 years of service. Thank you for your service. Thank you for listening. Sounds like you got your own stories, which I love hearing. So thank you for leaving that. And then the last one is from George Cole, 1883. He says, this man, Jay, is a stud. Totally squared away, honorable, and honest. Thank you for sharing, gentlemen. And obviously, for those who haven't seen the interview with Jay, he's Haitian-born, comes over to the U.S. at age 10. You can detect that hint of accent there, but he's still got that New York American immigrant swagger, I think, that we can all appreciate and that you would definitely want by your side downrange. So with that, thank you for tuning in. This was a tough one, obviously, with Trevor's childhood, but obviously well worth it. And to be the person who helped get Nick Lavery through dive school on the back end and leading people in combat as a Green Beret just shows how much you can overcome. So if you're feeling stuck, Trevor's a great resource to lean on. And he did say if people are interested, they can reach out to him. You can reach out to me. I'll connect you with him if you're struggling yourself. So thank you. Stay safe, y'all.